Hi guys, Mrs. C here. Just want to take a minute, and well, actually, it's going to be more than a minute probably because I would like to talk to you about how I tutor prep. I haven't seen a lot of videos on this, so hopefully it's helpful. Maybe it won't be at all. I really honestly haven't planned out exactly what I was going to tell you, so I'm just going to go through how I prep, and hopefully it'll help you as you're prepping. Maybe you already have a great system, so just don't listen to me. But maybe you need a little help in how to organize and go about prepping. Or maybe you're just looking for some new ideas. So hopefully this will be helpful. And I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm going to yawn a lot because I'm very tired. So partially why I'm tired is because it's the night before our community day, which is generally when I prep. I know a lot of people prep, days in advance, which is awesome. Power to you guys. Our community day is on Tuesday, and I try my best to not schedule anything on Mondays so that, one, we just have a day at home and we're recovering from the weekend and can make sure we get presentations and all that done. Also because I know that I need to prep for the next day, not just tutor stuff, lunches and, jackets and blankets and all that stuff that you guys bring. So anyway, without further ado, typically what I do when I start planning is my big trifold whiteboard here. I write out all of the material on the whiteboard. That's the first thing that I do for several reasons. One, because it's an easy thing to start out doing. There's not really any thinking other than just copying from the foundations guide onto the board. Two, it also helps me start looking at the memory work and getting it in my head. I still use, a paper calendar, and I still write all my lists on paper. Writing for me really helps things stick in my brain. So I like to start off writing it on my whiteboard so that it starts getting into my head. And also it just helps me kind of start visualizing the week, so to speak. I know that might be a weird way to think about it, but you can, when you're writing them out and you're looking at things, you can kind of see, oh, this lends itself well to doing, this specific game or this specific movement. And, oh, this one has 4 parts, so we're going to do this in it, kind of thing. So I like to write it on the board first, and then that's also done because I like to set my board out and let it kind of dry. Because I try to pack all my stuff the night before, so I write it, let it sit out, and usually by the time I'm done planning, I know it's a dry erase, but it takes a minute to dry. It's kind of dry enough that I can close my board without it smudging. So once I get everything written on there, I usually come and sit down, and I get out my really awesome Tutor planner. Tutor planner. And so my planner was printed for me by my director. She's super awesome like that. And I love it because, I'll show you real quick, it has all the memory work down this side, and then it has space over here to fill in for fine arts and science and presentations and review and write any supplies you need. It's just phenomenal. I don't utilize every single space of this. In fact, if you look back through past weeks, this has a lot more notes because I was gone last week, and so I wrote a lot more notes for my sub. But I don't have a lot of stuff written. I mean, it's not covered with notes. So don't let it intimidate you that it has all this space. You don't have to fill it all in. So generally what I do, I don't know why, it's just how I've always done it. Maybe because it's a little less creativity for me. So you guys see this? I pulled a muscle in my neck and my back, and so I have one of those heat patches on it, but makes it look like I have some kind of weird growth back there. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Space cadet tonight. But generally I start with science. I think probably just because I want to make sure that if I have to bring any materials that I have all of them, and I'd rather know that, earlier than later. But as you guys know, this year so far we haven't had a lot of materials, which has been awesome. So, last year, when we had more physical science, I would typically have had notes written in here from when we did our tutor training, but I would have my Van Cleves out. I would reread through the Van Cleves experiment, and I would also, if I could, try to find a video on YouTube of someone doing the experiment if it had been several weeks since our tutor planning meeting, just so that I could remember any nuances of, making sure the table's level, or, make sure that you wrap the tape this way or whatnot, just to make sure that I was doing it correctly. And also because sometimes in the videos they bring out some really interesting things to talk about that I hadn't thought about. I will also get onto CC Connected and see if there are any specific scripts for science. And not that I go by the script, but it does sometimes offer some, again, good insight or good things to bring up that maybe I hadn't thought about. Science isn't my forte, although I love it. It's not something that I feel really confident about bringing up. Like outside of what is given to us, I sometimes have a hard time thinking outside of that box. So those resources are really good for science. This year, obviously, we're in the my body book section right now. So I will have that out and just go through and read through what we're going to be doing for the week. Then I also have this really awesome book. It's the Bash Your Human Body book. And it has a page pretty much for every part of the body. For example, let's see, when you do heart, it's got a whole page on the heart. And it says very similar things to my body book, but it also it says it in a funnier way. So sometimes I will read parts of this out of here. I don't usually read the entire thing. But it does have some really fun things down at the bottom. It will say things like, I'm trying to find the one, sorry. Oh, so when we did kidneys, it talked about in my body book the nephrons, which are the little tubes in your kidneys. And so then in the Bachelor Science book, at the bottom, it has just little facts, and it said the total length of nephrons in a kidney is about 40 miles, which is incredible to me. I mean, just that we have 40 miles of something in our body. So I try to pull out little things like that to read to them, especially because some of my kids have had this before. It's their second time through. So if you have older kids, even with the younger kids too, but if you have older kids, this might be a really great resource to kind of jazz up the My Body section, so to speak. I also remembered the other night that I bought Whiteboard books that go right along with the Human Body book. So I'm going to bring some of those in just so the kids can look through, because some of these, they don't take as long to color as other ones do, and don't take as long to cut out, and that will give you a little extra. So I always like to have more than less. So as far as planning goes, I mark all the pages with little tabs in here, so I'm not having to search for them. I mark the pages in my body book, which these aren't marked yet, but I will mark them in my body book. And then if it was Van Cleves, I would mark those as well. And then I write down any notes. During tutor training, I will write down notes in here. And as I'm going through, if there's anything specific that I want to remember to bring out, I just write it down here. Then usually I move on to fine arts for planning. So the first 6 weeks with doing oils, I don't write a lot in here other than maybe, for example, perspective. It has some specific vocabulary that goes along with that. So I might write those down just to remind myself to make sure that I'm using those vocabulary words and to write them up on the board so that kids can see them. But I do spend a lot of time looking for like upside down drawing. I found step-by-step instructions, which were very helpful for me. And so I will print those out and I'll paper clip them in here. As we've moved on to 10 Whistle, I like to write out all of the new grammar words in my planner so that they're right there, and then any specific games or ideas, anything that I just want to make sure that I'm remembering, as far as like, don't forget to put tape on their left hand so they can say tape on top, or let's see, like like different rhythms, because we're going to be doing rhythm this week. So, a rhythm that I might think is fun, like Star Wars or something like that. I might see if I can find that online and write that out in here. So as you get later on, when you get into the great artists and composers, you can take the space and write, where they were from, anything interesting about them, where they fit in our timeline, any kind of little fun tidbits that kind of bring those people to life a little bit more, especially if you have the younger ones. I will also usually print out a page where that has several pictures of the art from the great artist. Goodness. And then for the composers, I usually try to print out a picture of the composer with some big bold words of what goes along with him to put up for my visual kids. So that takes care of fine arts. The fine arts doesn't take too long. Maybe that's why I start with those two first. They don't usually take very long and make me feel like I'm making a lot of progress. So then I move on to new grammar. New grammar is where I spend the majority of my time. As I said, while I'm putting up my whiteboard, I'm generally listening to, or I may have not said that, I'm generally listening to the history sentence, the math song, the timeline, even like this cycle I've been listening to the pronunciation of the Latin, any kind of oral stuff that I can listen to. I'll be listening to those while I'm writing out the board so that I'm starting to get those into my head. So by the time I sit down for here, I've heard them at least a few times and have a good idea of like the history song. Does it have kind of an upbeat or is it slower or, that kind of thing. So my planner has like the subjects all written down, so I kind of start at the top and work down, but occasionally I'll look down through there and see like, oh, Latin's got 4 words this week. That's really easy. We'll put up words in the 4 corners and I will yell an English word and they'll run to the right Latin word. So that one kind of takes care of itself. So a lot of times, like I said, I just look down through and see if any jump out at me as something easy to do, and then if not, I just start at the top and work down. So the timeline, I do hand motions, and we do the song because the kids they love the song. And if it works, I'm very much keep it the same. If it's working, don't change it. So I repeat a lot of things for these, but it's not because I'm not creative. It's just they've worked really well in the class, and if the kids are liking it and they're responding well, I figure just keep going with it. Especially with the younger kids, I found that if you do things similarly each time, they don't have to be the exact same, but similarly, they're kind of ready for it and prepared for it, and they tend to respond a little bit better and not get so out of hand. If you're having to spend a lot of time explaining what we're going to be doing next, you lose them. Even with the age that I have, that happens too. So I like to keep it moving really quickly in class, and I move a lot. So I told someone the other day, my theory is if you're not sweating by the time you're done with new grammar, then you haven't done it correctly. I'm just kidding. You don't have to sweat, but I definitely sweat in class. All the jumping that we do, man, wears me out. So anyway, I start with timeline, go through the hand motions, review them, make sure I've got them down. If there's any that maybe I've forgotten or that are kind of weird or that I'm worried that I remember, I'll write it out, but a lot of times I don't write them out. Although we are getting into the section that I don't know quite as well, then I might be writing some more of these out just to remind myself and jog myself. I also make sure that I have my timeline cards to take into class with me, because we do like to, grab a card and do the motion with it and then put them back in order and do them all in order. So I like to have the cards with me, and that's when I do the timeline, I go get my timeline cards and make sure they're put in with my stuff so that I have them. Then I usually go to math, and right now we've got songs in math, so that's worked really well. We do a lot of jumping for math. It just gets a lot of energy out because they're pretty excited when they come into class, and they've made them sit for geography at that point, and so then we do math and get them out of breath by jumping. Occasionally we'll do sitting, standing, touching toes. We do some kind of movement at that point. Now last year, and as we'll repeat this year as we get into more of the laws, I usually change it up and we don't move as much for those because some of them are kind of wordy. But we'll do silly voices sticks or something like that. Although this year I'm going to try, because a lot of them have the same letters, that we're going to do a specific motion for A and B and C. So all of our laws, I think, have A, B. They don't just have it. Some of them have A, B, and C, and some of them only have A and B. So I will repeat those motions for everyone. So I haven't decided what they are yet, but for example, we might say A and we might wave our arms, A, arms, and then B, we might bend our knees, something like that. But it'll be the same for every equation. I think that will help them remember the equations a little bit better. Then usually after I've gotten that, I move on to history. And again, like I said, I've listened to the song a few times at this point, so I sing along with it a few times, not very well usually, but I will sing along with it, try to make sure I have the tune somewhat down. And then, what happens when you play late at night? And then I will just look and see if it kind of lends itself to making a pictograph for some of the words. Sometimes the sentence, has some easy to draw words on it. So I will kind of go that route with it. If it doesn't have any, or if it doesn't lend itself well to that, like this week's sentence doesn't particularly lend itself well to drawing it out, although I'm sure I could if I wanted to, but I don't think it's going to work very well. So I will listen to the song and be like, and see, okay, does it lend itself well to marching? Should we use the egg shakers? Should I just erase words and have them say it? So I'll probably be doing erasing words this week. I kind of keep it within that scope for the history sentence. So it might seem repetitive, but it's just enough of a change that it's different every time, but similar enough that, again, they kind of know what's coming with the history sentence. So then I move on to Latin, and so far we've only had words for Latin. We've been learning different words, and now we're moving into Latin rules. So I will probably get out our silly voices stick, since it's, they're kind of full sentences, and if we have anything longer than a few words, I like to use the silly voices because it just makes it fun to say something long multiple times. Usually when I do my silly voices sticks, I have silly actions too that are in there as well. I will let the person choose if they want to do it, if they want the whole class to do it, or if they want me to do it. And 90% of the time they want me to do it. But sacrifices we make to, enlighten young minds, right? Okay. So that's probably what I will start doing for Latin last year with the chanting and learning the declensions. That made it a lot easier to kind of do something where you were passing a ball or clapping with the chants. So I would plan that totally different than I've been planning this year. And like I said earlier, if, I was looking at, I saw it had 4 words, I kind of just did 4 corners every time. So you kind of start seeing some patterns of things that work really well. And if it's worked in your class, I respond well to it. Like I said, I just continue doing it. Then we move on to science, and science has been fairly easy so far because it's all body science. So it's been easy to kind of do hand motions for those or point to things on our body. And last year with physical science, I did a lot of hand motions for that. I try to be conscious of not doing like all hand motions for everything or all songs for everything and mix it up a lot, because you do have kids that learn differently in there, but there are just some subjects that they kind of really lend themselves well to hand motions, and I find that science is one of those. So I do try to draw pictures on my trifold whiteboard back there for science, just to kind of give a visual of what we're talking about, especially as we're moving on to things like lymph vessels. Because they're not something that you're used to seeing pictures of. So I like to put pictures up there so they can kind of just have a visual to go along with those. But again, we just probably will do hand motions to go along with each of those. Sometimes if I find a good song, I will go through and, adapt it, or I will try to sing out, 4 parts of the lymph system to Happy Birthday or something, and see if an easy song comes to mind for those. But typically I like to do hand motions for that. Then I move on to English, and English last year was a lot of definitions. It's been some definitions this year, just not as long. And there was a big list last year. So English, I kind of flip-flop back and forth between doing a song for, which I hate to do songs for everything, like I said. But again, especially with the long list, it just makes it a lot easier if you have a song to go with it. I feel like at this age, with the grammar stage, that kids really learn well to music. And even if they can say it without the music, I definitely think having the rhythm and the patterns in music helps them to learn. So when we have long lists, I will often do a song. But with doing kind of the individual lists of the irregular verb tenses, I started, I think it was week 4 when we learned the different tenses. So I did hand motions with those. So we had like infinitive, we had present, past, present participle, past participle. So that's something that I'm continuing forward. So we're using those motions as we're learning these. And a lot of times we're jumping on an agility ladder, or I've done a few of them have, been perfect for actually doing the motion. So we've done that a few times. But if you can look through when you're planning and kind of see what's coming ahead, you can sometimes make it a little easier on yourself by doing things that you can carry forward through the week. So English, it just really depends on what it is for what I do. There you go. That was super helpful, wasn't it? You're welcome. The last part is geography, and I have been really boring with geography this year. I'm not gonna lie, like I've been frustrated with myself, but I mean at the same time the kids, they haven't seemed to mind. But last year I just felt like I had a lot more fun with geography, but I think the names were more fun and we were just learning countries, so it was easier than when you're having to say a capital and a state and keep them together and memorizing not just the state name but the capital name. So anyway, so this year we've just done a lot with our maps and dry erase markers, and you know what, that's been fine. There's not a lot of other ones of these that writing or drawing works great with consistently, so that's a good way to allow those kids who do well writing. Like I said, I'm a person that has to write things out, so drawing and writing are really beneficial for me, and this geography is a good one to do that with. So if I look at the capitals that we're doing for the week and I see that they have, I never can remember, is it mnemonic? Is that a mnemonic device? Is that what it is? We're going to go with that. If they have a mnemonic device that I can use with it, for example, when we did Springfield, Illinois, we did a spring in it. We drew a coil for a spring. And then like this week we're gonna have Salt Lake City, Utah, so I'm gonna have them draw a salt shaker in there. So there are sometimes that those lend themselves really well. Now occasionally the groups of states we've had, you know, maybe one of them would have done that, but most of them wouldn't. So then I'm just have them draw things like draw a circle, draw a triangle, a star in there, and we just go through. And so I go through a few times and then we erase, and then we draw some other things and erase. So when I'm planning this out, I do for geography. The other ones I don't typically write out, okay, this is going to be 7 times since that's our goal. But geography, I will kind of write out, you know, like say them, draw the shapes, say them again, erase the corresponding shape to whatever I'm saying, kind of thing, to make sure that I get 7 in. Because that one I tend, because it's 5 separate states, I tend to kind of lose track of how many times I've gone through them. So I will write that one out. And then you're done. I mean, you do have review. And some people like to plan review. And if you are a person who likes to plan review, then that is awesome. I would suggest having 6 games. That's all you need, because then they will only play them 4 times in the whole year. So get yourself 6 games that works well for your class and play those 4 times each. It makes it so much simpler. You could even have just 4 games that they really like. So I tend to bring 3 or 4 review games with me every week, just because I like to kind of see where the class is. And right now they've really been loving Battleship, and if they ask for it, then I like to have it for them to play, because like I said, if they want to do it, then let's do it, you know. But I will bring some other ones just in case no one requests anything and I feel like, okay, they really need to get some energy out, so we're going to do this one that makes them run. Or they're pretty calm, so we're going to do this one because we could tell before. Oh, excuse me. Or maybe they've been kind of quiet, which hasn't really happened much with my class, but maybe you have a more quiet class, and so you want one that doesn't necessarily single somebody out, so you may play more of a group game. Or maybe you're playing a game that you know is going to be during an open house, and you want to have one that you don't have to have, like Battleship wouldn't work well for that because you have to have individual ones for that, so maybe you would have to make extra, or maybe you didn't know somebody was coming to visit. So, you know, I just like to have a few different ones on hand. But I do plan occasionally, like next week we'll finish up all the states, and I've learned that it's okay to spend a review time going over one specific subject and reviewing all that subject. So I'm thinking that it might be fun to get the other classes together and do relay races with all 3 classes. So I got to talk to their tutors about that and see. So occasionally I will plan that, but otherwise I don't plan. As far as presentations go, I do we do have a list of suggested topics and what they're working on, and I have that printed out already. It's just in with my tutor stuff, so I don't really have to plan too much for that because that's already laid out for us, so I just kind of go with there. I will show you my really awesome sparkly pink glitter thing. This is what I keep, like my planner will go in here, my body book will go in here, woo, my timeline cards will go in here, my Bachelor Science book will go in here. It will all be in here. So when I get to my room, I pull this out and it's all of my stuff that I need in there, which is the best ever. I don't have 50 million papers everywhere like I did last year. I stole this from my daughter, by the way. So she didn't really mind, but that's why it's pink and glittery. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much how I plan. It generally takes me an hour or less, I would say. Occasionally I will get, tired and my creative juices will stop flowing, or something just kind of stumps me and I can't think of any fun way to do it. And then I turn to the Facebook tutor page, CC Connected, and often YouTube. And I will just search on there until I find something that will kind of work. Or something that, if I realize, okay, I've got a bunch of songs, I try to find hand motions, I try to look for specific things, but generally, those are the places that I'll go, and I can find something that, if it doesn't work perfectly, will at least spark an idea for how I can do it for my class. So I wish you guys luck in planning, and I know that, it's one of the most intimidating things I think about tutoring, but once you start doing it, I think everybody finds their own rhythm and their own way that works for them, and then you just roll with it. So I hope you guys have a great week. We've been on fall break, and then I was gone last week, so I'm really excited to get back in my class, and I will have another video for you up tomorrow, week 9. So see you guys later.